The smell hit me first. Disinfectant and fear, mingled with the musk of the Burmese python I'd just examined. My fingers still trembled slightly as I locked the reptile's enclosure, the adrenaline from wrestling 200 pounds of muscle finally beginning to ebb. The wall clock read 9:47. I'd been at Cross Creek Exotic Animal Clinic for 14 hours straight, and my back screamed its protest with every movement. I loved this place. Every scratched examination table, every temperature-controlled habitat, every specialized piece of equipment I'd fought to afford represented a dream I'd clawed into reality. At 27, I'd built something that mattered. A sanctuary where creatures most veterinarians wouldn't touch found expert care. Sugar gliders, venomous lizards, endangered parrots, even the occasional confiscated wildlife from customs. They all came through my doors. But partnerships, I was learning, were complicated things. Riley, Marcus Webb's voice cut through my exhaustion. My business partner stood in the doorway of my office, his expensive suit somehow still crisp despite the late hour. We need to talk. Something in his tone made my stomach clench. I'd known Marcus for 6 years, since veterinary school, and I'd never heard that particular edge before. Cold, calculating. Nothing like the easygoing classmate who'd proposed we open a practice together specializing in exotic animals. Can it wait until morning? I pulled off my latex gloves and tossed them in the biohazard bin. I need to check on the macaw one more time before I leave, and it can't wait. He stepped fully into my office, and I noticed for the first time that he wasn't alone. 2 men in dark suits flanked him, their faces expressionless. Private security, maybe. Or lawyers. Either way, my instincts screamed danger. I positioned myself behind my desk, putting solid oak between us. What's going on, Marcus? I need you to sign these. He dropped a manila folder on my desk. Papers spilled out, official-looking documents dense with legal terminology. Health certificates for a shipment coming in next week. Rare birds from Southeast Asia. My eyes scanned the top page, and my blood went cold. These animals haven't been examined. I can't certify them as disease-free when I haven't even seen them. You'll see them when they arrive. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. But the buyers need documentation now. Standard procedure. Standard procedure is examining the animals first. I pushed the papers back toward him. You know that. We could lose our licenses, face criminal charges. If those birds are carrying avian flu or psittacosis, the buyers are paying triple our usual rate. He leaned forward, planting his palms on my desk. Do you know what that kind of money means for this practice? For your precious rescue cases that barely pay the bills? It means fraud. I stood my ground, though my heart hammered against my ribs. And I won't do it. Find another veterinarian. The 2 men in suits moved closer, bracketing the door. Suddenly my office felt very small. Marcus's expression hardened into something I didn't recognize. Something that made me realize I'd never really known him at all. You don't have a choice, Riley. You're going to sign those papers. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than a shout. Or I'll make sure you never practice veterinary medicine again. I have connections you can't imagine. One call, and your reputation is destroyed. Allegations of malpractice, falsified records, drug theft, pick your poison. You're insane. But even as I said it, pieces clicked into place. The expensive car he'd bought last year, the designer clothes, the mysterious investors he'd mentioned but never introduced me to. How long have you been running illegal imports through this clinic? Smart girl. He picked up a pen and held it out to me. Now be a smart girl and sign. I looked at the pen, then at the documents, then at the 2 silent men blocking my exit. The macaw in the next room squawked, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding. All those animals depending on me, all those years of study and sacrifice. Everything I'd built, about to crumble because my partner had sold his soul to traffickers. My hand moved toward the pen. Not to take it, to reach for my phone. Marcus was faster. He snatched my phone off the desk and pocketed it. No calls, no help. Just you, me, and a simple decision. Sign or lose everything. I'd rather lose the clinic than my integrity. The words came out steadier than I felt. My mind raced, cataloging possible weapons within reach. Scalpel in the top drawer. Fire extinguisher on the wall. Ketamine in the locked cabinet. But I'd need time to access it. Then you're a fool. Marcus nodded to his companions. Gentlemen, please help Dr. Thorne understand the seriousness of her situation. They moved with practiced efficiency, one circling the desk while the other remained at the door. I grabbed the first thing my hand found, a heavy ceramic model of a horse's hoof, a gift from a grateful client. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. Stay back. I raised it, knowing how pathetic I must look. A tired veterinarian in scrubs, wielding a decorative paperweight against men who probably broke bones for a living. The door exploded inward. Not opened, exploded. The wood frame splintered as if struck by a battering ram, and suddenly the small office was full of moving bodies. 4 men poured through the destroyed doorway, dressed in black tactical gear that belonged in a movie, not a suburban veterinary clinic. They moved with military precision, neutralizing Marcus's thugs in seconds with moves I only half saw. And then there was him. Sebastian Cross walked through the chaos like a king surveying his kingdom. 6'3" of controlled power wrapped in a 3-piece suit that probably cost more than my student loan payment. Dark hair silvered at the temples, sharp jaw, and eyes the color of smoke that fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. I'd met him exactly once, 3 months ago, when he'd shown up at midnight with an Arabian stallion worth more than my clinic, the horse convulsing with colic while Cross had demanded I save him. I'd worked for 6 hours straight, my arms shoulder-deep in $1 million animal, performing a miracle through sheer stubborn will and expertise that most equine vets wouldn't attempt. He'd paid my emergency fee without blinking, left his private number, and told me to call if I ever needed anything. I'd thrown the number away because men like Sebastian Cross didn't make offers without strings attached. Apparently, he'd kept track of me anyway. Mr. Cross. My voice came out steadier than my knees felt. This is breaking and entering. This is a rescue. His eyes never left mine as his men secured Marcus and his companions with zip ties. Your business partner has been under investigation for wildlife trafficking for 6 months. Your clinic is about to be raided by federal agents. He glanced at his watch. In approximately 12 minutes. What? I looked at Marcus, who'd gone pale. That's impossible. I would have known. You were deliberately kept in the dark. Sebastian moved closer, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne and something darker, more primal. Marcus Webb has been using your reputation and credentials to move endangered species through a network spanning 3 continents. The evidence is overwhelming. Then why are you here instead of the feds? I still clutch the ceramic hoof, though against Sebastian Cross it would be useless as a feather. Because when those doors get kicked in, everyone in this building becomes a suspect. He was close enough now that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Including you, and I don't allow what's mine to be treated like a common criminal. What's yours? The words came out sharper than intended. I'm not anyone's anything. Something flickered in those smoke-gray eyes. Amusement, maybe, or challenge. You saved Sultan's life. That makes you mine to protect, whether you accept it or not. That's the most arrogant thing I've ever heard. But my brain was catching up with the situation, processing the implications. Federal raid, investigation, my career, my clinic, everything I'd worked for about to be swept up in Marcus's crimes. I had nothing to do with his trafficking operation. I know. He said it with such certainty that I wanted to believe him. But proving that will take time, lawyers, and navigating a system designed to grind people like you into dust. Or... He pulled out his phone, pressed a button, and suddenly voices filled the room. Marcus's voice recorded, discussing illegal shipments. Names, dates, routes, everything federal prosecutors would need. And in every conversation, he explicitly discussed keeping me ignorant, using my legitimate practice as cover. How did you get this? I stared at the phone, then at Sebastian, understanding dawning. You've been investigating him too. Protecting my interests. He pocketed the phone. Your partner approached several of my business associates about using my hotels as transit points for his operation. I don't appreciate people assuming I'm corrupt. His expression hardened. I especially don't appreciate them trying to destroy innocent parties in the process. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Sebastian's men had Marcus and his companions secured and were already moving toward the back exit. Sebastian himself hadn't moved, still standing close enough that I could see the individual threads in his suit jacket. Come with me. He extended a hand. Right now. Federal agents are about to storm this building, and while you're technically innocent, you'll be detained, questioned, potentially charged as a co-conspirator until my lawyers can untangle the mess. Or you can walk out that door under my protection. I have animals that need care. It was the first thing my brain could articulate. The macaw, the python, 3 ferrets recovering from surgery, already arranged. He nodded toward one of his men. Dr. Patricia Chen from Metro Exotic Animal Hospital is en route with a full team. Your animals will receive the best care available. Of course he'd thought of that. Men like Sebastian Cross didn't make offers without having every contingency planned. The sirens were closer now, maybe 2 blocks away. Marcus was struggling against his restraints, shouting something I couldn't quite hear over the blood pounding in my ears. I looked at my office, my sanctuary, my dream. About to become a crime scene. I looked at Sebastian's outstretched hand. I looked at the future splitting before me into 2 paths. One where I fought alone through a legal nightmare that could take years, and one where I accepted help from a man who terrified and intrigued me in equal measure. If I go with you, I heard myself say, I'm not owned, not protected like some helpless damsel. I'm a professional who got caught in someone else's crime, and I'll cooperate with the investigation on my own terms. His smile was slow, predatory, and entirely too attractive. If you insist. I do. I ignored his hand and walked past him toward the back exit, ceramic hoof still clutched in my fist like a talisman. And you're explaining everything in the car. His laugh followed me into the night. As you wish, Dr. Thorne. The last thing I saw before his men hustled me into a black SUV was the flash of blue and red lights turning onto my street, descending on my clinic like a swarm of angry bees. Everything I'd built, gone in an instant. But as Sebastian slid into the seat beside me and the vehicle pulled smoothly into traffic, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something else entirely. The SUV's leather seats were more comfortable than my bed, which only irritated me more. I sat rigid, refusing to relax, while Sebastian Cross sprawled beside me with the casual confidence of someone who'd never worried about anything in his entire privileged life. His men occupied the front seats, silent and professional, while the city lights streaked past the tinted windows. Start talking. I finally broke the silence that had stretched for 10 minutes. How long have you been watching me? Since the night you saved Sultan. He didn't hesitate, didn't try to soften it. You worked on that horse like nothing else in the world existed. Most vets would have recommended euthanasia, taken the insurance payout and gone home. You fought for him. That's my job. But I remembered that night too vividly. The magnificent Arabian stallion thrashing in pain, his intestines twisted in a way that should have been fatal. I'd performed a field surgery with nothing but determination and skill, my hands steady even as sweat poured down my face. You paid me. That should have been the end of it. It should have been. Something in his voice made me look at him. Really look, beyond the expensive suit and powerful presence. But you refused my offer to become Sultan's primary veterinarian. Do you know how often I'm told no? Not often enough, I'm guessing. I shifted away from him, pressing against the door. So what? You had me followed because I bruised your ego? I had you protected because I recognize value. He leaned forward, his smoke-gray eyes intense in the dim interior light. Do you know what Marcus was actually planning? Those birds he wanted you to certify aren't just rare. They're stolen from a wildlife preserve in Thailand. 18 blue-throated macaws, a species so endangered that fewer than 400 exist in the wild. My stomach dropped. Oh, God. He planned to sell them through underground channels for $500,000 each. And when the investigation traced them back to your clinic, you would have been the licensed veterinarian on the documentation. The one who certified them as legally obtained and disease-free. Sebastian's expression hardened. You would have faced 20 years in federal prison while Marcus disappeared with his money. You're saying he was setting me up from the start. It wasn't a question. The pieces fit too perfectly now. Marcus's insistence that I handle all the legal paperwork, his constant pressure to expand faster than we could sustain, the way he'd isolated me from the business side of the practice. I'm saying your partner is scum who saw your reputation as a tool to exploit. Sebastian pulled out a tablet and handed it to me. This is everything my investigators compiled. Bank records, communications, transport manifests. Marcus Webb has been running his operation for 3 years, long before you partnered with him. I scrolled through the documents, my horror growing with each page. Endangered species from 6 continents, profits in the millions. A network of corrupt officials, dealers, and wealthy buyers who treated rare animals like trading cards. And my name, my credentials, my clinic, all of it weaponized to give his crimes legitimacy. Why didn't you go to the authorities immediately? I looked up from the tablet. If you had all this evidence. Because federal investigations move slowly, and I needed to be certain you weren't complicit. He said it matter-of-factly, without apology. I've been watching you for 3 months, Dr. Thorne. Every late night you spent caring for animals whose owners couldn't afford treatment. Every weekend you volunteered at the wildlife rescue. Every time you chose ethics over profit. So I passed your test. The words tasted bitter. How lovely. You exceeded every expectation. He reached over and closed the tablet, forcing me to meet his eyes. You're brilliant, dedicated, and stubborn to a fault. You also work yourself to exhaustion, eat 1 meal a day if you're lucky, and haven't taken a vacation since you graduated veterinary school. You had me investigated that thoroughly? Anger flared hot in my chest. That's not protection, Mr. Cross. That's stalking. That's ensuring my investments are sound. He didn't flinch from my glare. I'm offering you something, Riley. May I call you Riley? No, but I didn't look away. What investment? What are you talking about? Your clinic is about to be seized as evidence. Your assets frozen. Your reputation dragged through media coverage that won't care about your innocence. He leaned back, utterly composed while my world crumbled around me. I'm offering to fix all of it. The SUV turned onto a private road I didn't recognize, tree-lined and dark. In exchange for what? My soul? My firstborn child? Sexual favors? His laugh was sharp and surprised. I can get sex anywhere, Dr. Thorne. What I want is your expertise. I don't understand. I own 16 boutique hotels across New England, luxury properties catering to extremely wealthy clients who have unique requirements. He gestured out the window as we passed through ornate iron gates. Sultan isn't my only exotic animal. I maintain private stables, aviaries, aquariums, even a reptile house at my Connecticut estate. All of it requires expert veterinary care. Hire a vet. I crossed my arms. Why does it have to be me? Because you're the best. He said it simply, as if it were obvious fact. Because you care about the animals first, and the money second. And because I want you where I can keep you safe. The SUV stopped in front of a mansion that belonged in a magazine. 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within like a jewel box. Manicured grounds stretched into darkness, and in the distance I could see the outline of what looked like stables. This is your Connecticut estate. It wasn't a question. One of them. He opened his door and stepped out, then offered me his hand. I ignored it again, climbing out on my own despite the fact that my legs felt like water. Welcome to Crossroads Manor, Riley. Your home for the foreseeable future. I didn't agree to anything, but I followed him up the stone steps because where else could I go? Back to my apartment, where federal agents were probably already executing a search warrant. And I'm not staying here. This is kidnapping. This is hospitality. He pushed open the massive front door, revealing an entrance hall that could have housed my entire clinic. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, artwork that looked genuinely antique. You're free to leave whenever you want, but I'd recommend staying at least until the federal agents finish destroying your life. A woman appeared from a side corridor, 50s, elegant, with sharp eyes that assessed me instantly. Mr. Cross, Dr. Thorne, I've prepared the blue suite as requested. Thank you, Margaret. Sebastian shrugged out of his suit jacket and handed it to her without looking. Riley, this is Margaret Chen, my estate manager. She'll show you to your rooms and provide anything you need. I need my phone, and my clothes, and an explanation for why you think I'd stay in your house like some... I struggled for the right word. Guest? He raised an eyebrow. Employee? Future business partner? Take your pick. Prisoner. I finished. Dramatic. But he pulled a phone from his pocket, my phone, and handed it over. No restrictions. Call anyone you want. Your lawyer, your family, the FBI. Tell them exactly where you are. I took the phone, suspicious of the easy compliance. What's the catch? No catch. He loosened his tie, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked almost human. Tired, maybe, or just less perfectly composed. I'm betting that once you hear what I'm offering, you'll want to stay. Margaret cleared her throat delicately. Sir, Dr. Chen is waiting in the stables. The mare is showing signs of distress. Sebastian's expression shifted instantly from negotiation to concern. Which mare? Starlight. Possible colic. He was moving before she finished speaking, heading toward a rear corridor. Riley, come with me. I'm not your on-call vet, but my feet were already following because a horse in distress overrode every other consideration. Professional instinct kicked in, my brain automatically running through colic symptoms and treatment protocols. We emerged from the house into cool night air, crossing a courtyard toward the most luxurious stable I'd ever seen. Not the utilitarian barn of my limited equine experience, but something that looked like a 5-star hotel for horses. Brass fixtures gleamed under soft lighting. Classical music played from hidden speakers. Each stall was larger than my apartment's living room. This is insane. I breathed, taking it all in. How many horses do you have? 23. He led me past stalls housing magnificent animals that turned to watch us with curious eyes. Arabians, thoroughbreds, a few warm bloods. I breed and compete. It's a hobby that became a passion. We reached a stall at the end where a gray mare paced restlessly, her sides heaving. An older woman in veterinary scrubs stood outside, monitoring. She looked up as we approached. Sebastian, Dr. Thorne. She nodded to me. Patricia Chen. We met once at a conference. I remembered her. Brilliant equine specialist, semi-retired. You're the backup vet he sent to my clinic. I'm also his aunt. She smiled wryly. Family business. Starlight started showing symptoms an hour ago. Pawing, looking at her flanks, elevated heart rate. I've administered Banamine, but I wanted a second opinion before we go invasive. I was already moving to the stall door, my exhaustion forgotten. This was what I knew. This was where I felt confident. May I examine her? Please. Sebastian stepped back, giving me space but watching intently. I entered the stall slowly, letting the mare recognize me as non-threatening. She was beautiful, dappled gray with intelligent dark eyes currently clouded with discomfort. I ran my hands over her sides, feeling for gas buildup, listening to her gut sounds with a stethoscope Patricia handed me. Heart rates elevated but not critical. I worked methodically, checking capillary refill, gum color, temperature. Gut sounds are reduced on the left side. When was her last bowel movement? This morning, Patricia consulted her notes. Normal amount and consistency. I pressed carefully on the mare's abdomen, watching her reaction. I think it's gas colic early stage. The Banamine should help, but she needs walking. 20 minutes every hour until the blockage passes. I looked at Sebastian. Your aunt is right. We can wait before considering more aggressive treatment. You're certain? He'd moved closer to the stall door, close enough that I could see genuine concern in his expression. 90% certain. I stroked Starlight's neck, and she leaned into the touch. But I'll stay with her through the night to be sure. If she worsens, we'll need to tube her or consider surgery. All night? Patricia looked surprised. Dr. Thorne, you've had a difficult evening. I can monitor her. No offense, Dr. Chen, but I'm already here, and I stopped myself before saying, I'm too wired to sleep anyway. Instead, I'm the one who made the diagnosis. I should see it through. Sebastian and his aunt exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. Finally, he nodded. Then I'll stay with you. That's not necessary. It's my horse, my stable, my responsibility. He'd already removed his tie completely and rolled up his sleeves. Besides, you'll need someone to walk her while you rest. I wanted to argue, but the logic was sound. And truthfully, the prospect of spending the night alone in a strange place, even a stable, felt more unsettling than I wanted to admit. Fine. I turned back to Starlight. But don't expect me to make conversation. I'm here for her, not you. His soft laugh followed me as I led the mare out of her stall and into the aisle. Patricia handed me a lead rope and some instructions, then excused herself, citing the need to prepare for the animals being transferred from my clinic. And then, it was just me, Sebastian Cross, and a colicky horse, walking slow circles in the most expensive stable I'd ever seen, while the night deepened around us. You love this. Sebastian spoke after we'd completed 3 silent circuits. Being with animals, it's not just a career. It's everything. I didn't see the point in denying it. People are complicated. Animals are honest. You treat them well, they trust you. You help them heal, they remember. And people? He matched my pace, his expensive shoes somehow navigating the stable floor without issue. People lie. People betray. People use you for their own gain and throw you away when you're no longer useful. I heard the bitterness in my voice and hated it. Present company excluded, apparently, though I still don't understand why. I told you, you saved Sultan. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. I stopped walking, forcing Starlight to halt. The mare nuzzled my shoulder, seeking comfort, and I stroked her face. Nobody upends their life and deploys tactical teams to rescue a veterinarian they met once, unless there's something else going on. Sebastian was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those smoke-gray eyes. You're right. There is something else. My heart kicked against my ribs. What? I was there that night, in the stall with Sultan, watching you work. And I saw something I haven't seen in... He paused, choosing words carefully. A very long time. Absolute dedication. Pure competence. Someone who cared more about doing the job right than impressing me or securing future business. So this is about admiration? I started walking again, needing movement. You're playing White Knight because you were impressed? I'm protecting an asset because I recognize rare value when I see it. He kept pace easily. And because I want you working for me, not rotting in a federal detention center while lawyers argue about documents you never even read. Working for you. The word settled between us like a challenge. As what, exactly? Chief Veterinary Officer for Cross Luxury Estates. He said it calmly, as if offering me a job title instead of my entire future. Full medical authority over all animals on all my properties. Unlimited budget for equipment and staff. Salary that's triple what you were making at your clinic. I almost stumbled. That's insane. That's business. He stopped walking, forcing me to face him. Riley, your clinic is gone. Even if you're cleared of all charges, the damage to your reputation will take years to rebuild. Marcus's crimes will taint you by association. You'll spend the best years of your career fighting to prove you're not a criminal. Or, my throat felt tight, or you let me fix it. My lawyers will handle the federal investigation. My PR team will manage the media narrative. And you'll work here, doing what you do best, while the legal mess gets quietly resolved. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the intimate space. In 6 months, you'll have a better reputation than ever. In a year, you'll have resources you never dreamed of, and all of it legitimate, legal, and yours. It was too good, too easy. What do you really want from me, Sebastian? I want you safe. He said it simply, and for the first time, I heard something genuine beneath the business magnate exterior. I want your expertise, and I want to see what you can build when you're not limited by budget constraints and corrupt partners. Starlight nickered softly, reminding us of her presence. I stroked her neck, using the motion to avoid Sebastian's intense gaze. And if I say no? Then I'll still protect you from the legal fallout, because I don't leave people to suffer unjustly. His hand came up, almost touching my face before dropping. But I'll be disappointed, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what you could have accomplished. I looked around the stable, the pristine equipment, the healthy animals, the obvious wealth poured into their care. I thought about my clinic, now crawling with federal agents. My apartment, probably ransacked in a search. My career, hanging by a thread. And I thought about the ceramic hoof still somehow clutched in my hand. A ridiculous weapon that represented everything I'd tried to defend and failed to save. One condition, I heard myself say. I want my own facility. Not just access to yours. A real veterinary hospital here on the estate, equipped for exotic animals and emergencies. State-of-the-art surgical suite, ICU, the works. Sebastian's smile was slow and triumphant. Done. I'm not finished. I raised my chin. I also want autonomy. You don't get to dictate my treatment decisions or override my medical judgment. Ever. Your animals are patients, not commodities. Agreed. He extended his hand, formal suddenly. Do we have a deal, Dr. Thorne? I looked at his hand, then at his face, trying to see past the controlled exterior to the truth beneath. Whatever else Sebastian Cross might be. Ruthless businessman, possible criminal, definite control freak. He'd saved me tonight. He'd seen through Marcus when I was blind, and he was offering me a future when I had none. I took his hand. His palm was warm, calloused in unexpected places. Not a man who merely owned horses, a man who worked with them. "We have a deal." The words felt like stepping off a cliff. "But I'm sleeping in the stable tonight, with starlight. Then I'll bring blankets." He squeezed my hand once before releasing it. "Welcome to Crossroads Manor, Dr. Riley Thorne. I have a feeling you're going to change everything." As he walked away to fetch supplies, I pressed my forehead against Starlight's warm neck and wondered what the hell I'd just agreed to. But for the first time in 14 hours, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't drowning anymore. 3 months later, I stood in the surgical suite of what had become the finest exotic veterinary hospital in New England, elbow deep in a Bengal tiger cub's abdomen, and realized my life had become completely unrecognizable. Suction. I didn't look up, my entire focus on the delicate organs visible through the incision. My assistant, Dr. James Park, who jumped at the chance to leave his underfunded zoo position for Cross Estates, quickly cleared the surgical field. "Foreign body identified," I murmured into the recording device mounted above the operating table. "Appears to be a cloth fragment, approximately 4 centimeters by 6 centimeters, lodged in the jejunum causing partial obstruction. The tiger cub belonged to a private collector in Vermont, one of several clients who'd started calling once word spread about the new facility. Sebastian had delivered on every promise. The hospital occupied a converted carriage house on the eastern edge of the estate, 5,000 square feet of specialized equipment, climate-controlled recovery rooms, and surgical technology that made my old clinic look like a child's play set. "How's her vitals?" I carefully grasped the foreign object with forceps, my movements controlled and precise. "Stable. Heart rate 130, respiration 22, blood pressure holding steady." James monitored the screens displaying the cub's life signs. "You want to close?" "In a minute." I examined the intestinal tissue for damage, relieved to find only minor inflammation. This little girl has been sneaking into someone's laundry basket, probably chewing on towels when nobody's watching. Rich people's problems. James's voice held amusement. "My last patient was a malnourished capuchin monkey seized from a roadside zoo. This one's probably fed filet mignon." Animals don't care about their owners' bank accounts. I began the closing process, my sutures neat and methodically placed. They just want to feel safe and loved, even Bengal tiger cubs who eat designer towels. An hour later, the cub was recovering in one of the ICU kennels. Her owner, a nervous woman in pearls and Chanel, sobbing with relief and writing a check that would fund the hospital for a month. I peeled off my surgical gloves and scrubbed up, letting the hot water wash away the tension that always accompanied major procedures. "Dr. Thorne?" Margaret's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Cross is requesting your presence at the main stables. One of the mares is foaling earlier than expected." I checked the wall clock, 6:30 in the evening. I'd been in surgery since noon, and my stomach was staging a revolt, but horses didn't care about meal schedules. "Tell him I'm on my way." I grabbed a protein bar from my office, a space Sebastian had designed with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a pond where exotic waterfowl preened, and headed for the stables. The walk gave me time to appreciate what I'd stepped into. Crossroads Manor, sprawled across 300 acres of Connecticut countryside, carefully landscaped to provide natural habitats for Sebastian's extensive animal collection. Beyond the horses, there were aviaries housing rare parrots and finches, a reptile house with climate zones mimicking 6 different ecosystems, and a private pond stocked with koi worth more than luxury cars. All of it under my medical supervision. All of it my responsibility. It should have been overwhelming. Instead, it felt like coming home to a place I'd never known existed. The main stable was bustling when I arrived. Several of Sebastian's staff, stable hands, trainers, breeding managers, clustered around a stall where a chestnut mare paced restlessly. And there was Sebastian himself, sleeves rolled up despite the expensive suit, speaking quietly to Patricia Chen. He looked up when I entered, and something in his expression made my pulse quicken. Not concern for the mare, though that was present, but something else. Something that had been building in the 3 months since I'd agreed to work for him. Something we'd both been studiously ignoring. Riley. He'd started using my first name without asking permission about 2 weeks in, and I'd stopped correcting him because hearing it in his deep voice did things to my equilibrium that I didn't want to examine. Diamond Girl's water broke 20 minutes ago. Patricia thinks it's a textbook delivery, but we wanted you here. Let me see her. I moved to the stall, my professional focus overriding everything else. The mare was one of Sebastian's prized thoroughbreds, bloodlines worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this foal represented significant investment. But more than that, she was a living creature about to perform the miracle of birth, and I'd be damned if anything went wrong on my watch. The next 2 hours blurred into controlled chaos. Diamond Girl was a first-time mother, nervous and in pain, requiring constant reassurance as her body worked to deliver the foal. Patricia and I worked in tandem, monitoring position and progress, ready to intervene if complications arose. Sebastian stayed the entire time, never in the way, but always present, his calm presence somehow helping to soothe the anxious mare. I watched him between contractions, noticing the genuine care in how he stroked her neck, murmured encouragement, celebrated each small milestone. This wasn't a rich man protecting an investment. This was someone who loved his animals with a depth I recognized because I felt it too. Hooves visible. Patricia's announcement pulled me back to focus. Position looks good. Come on, girl, you can do this. I positioned myself to assist if needed, my hands clean and ready. Almost there. When the foal finally slipped free in a rush of fluid and membrane, when Diamond Girl turned to nuzzle her baby with tender curiosity, when the newborn thoroughbred struggled to its impossibly long legs and stood for the first time, in that moment, I forgot everything else. Forgot Marcus's betrayal. Forgot the federal investigation still grinding along in the background. Forgot every doubt and question about my new life. This was why I became a veterinarian. These moments of pure wonder, watching life persist and thrive against impossible odds. She's perfect. Sebastian's voice was rough with emotion. He stood beside me now, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Thank you. I didn't do anything. I couldn't look away from the foal, now nursing vigorously while her mother stood patiently. Diamond Girl did all the work. You were here. That matters. His hand found mine, a casual touch that felt anything but casual. To her, to me. I should have pulled away, should have maintained professional boundaries that had been growing increasingly blurred since the night we'd walked starlight through her colic. But his hand was warm, and I was tired, and the sight of new life always made me feel emotionally raw. Sebastian. I finally turned to look at him. What are we doing? Celebrating a successful birth? But his slight smile acknowledged the real question. You know what I mean. I did pull away then, suddenly aware of Patricia and the stable staff still present. This arrangement, me being here, living in your guest house, working exclusively for you, people are going to talk. Let them talk. He didn't seem concerned. You're the best veterinarian in New England. Any rumors about our relationship are irrelevant to that fact. But there is no relationship. The words came out more forcefully than intended. There's an employer and an employee. Professional courtesy. Nothing more. If you say so. He turned back to the mare and foal, but I caught the knowing look on his face. Though I notice you haven't asked about the federal investigation in over a month. He was right. I'd been so absorbed in building the hospital, treating patients, and settling into the rhythm of life at Crossroads Manor that I'd almost forgotten I was supposed to be in crisis mode. Because your lawyers keep telling me everything's handled. I crossed my arms. Marcus took a plea deal. The charges against me were dropped. My name was officially cleared in the press. It's like you waved a magic wand and made all my problems disappear. Not magic, resources and persistence. Sebastian gestured toward the stable exit, and I followed him out into the cool evening air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. And you've been too busy revolutionizing exotic animal medicine to worry about legal minutiae? Don't do that. I stopped walking, forcing him to face me. Don't make this about me being busy. You orchestrated everything. You controlled every aspect of the narrative. Sometimes I wonder if you manipulated the whole situation from the beginning, just to get me here. His expression went carefully blank. Do you really believe that? I wanted to say yes, wanted to maintain the anger and suspicion that had protected me since Marcus's betrayal. But honesty forced me to shake my head. No, but I also don't understand why you care so much. I told you the Sultan story. I cut him off. That's not enough. Nobody builds a multi-million-dollar veterinary hospital for someone they met once. Nobody deploys private security and teams of lawyers and PR specialists to protect a stranger. So what's the real reason, Sebastian? What do you actually want from me? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. Then he stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact, and I saw something in those smoke-gray eyes that made my breath catch. I want you exactly where you are. He said it quietly, intensely. Doing what you do best, surrounded by resources instead of limitations. I want to watch you thrive without anyone holding you back or using you. I want... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. What? My heart was hammering now. Say it. I want you to look at me the way you looked at that foal just now. The confession came out rough. Like I'm something worth celebrating instead of someone to be suspicious of. The honesty stole my breath. I'd spent 3 months constructing walls, maintaining professional distance, telling myself that Sebastian Cross was just my employer and benefactor, that the way my pulse raced when he entered a room meant nothing, that the hours we spent together, walking horses, discussing treatment plans, celebrating successful surgeries, were merely collegial. I'd been lying to myself. I don't know how to do this. The admission felt dangerous. I trusted Marcus, and he was using me from day one. How do I trust you when you've got so much more power, so much more control over my life? You don't. Sebastian's answer surprised me. Not yet. Trust isn't given, Riley. It's earned through consistency over time. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to give me the chance to prove I'm worthy of it. By doing what? Buying me more equipment? Throwing money at problems? I gestured toward the sprawling estate. All of this is wonderful, but it's also a cage. His voice held understanding. I know. That's why I'm telling you now, clearly and explicitly. You can leave whenever you want. The hospital is yours, regardless. I'll sign it over completely. Put it in your name with an endowment to run it independently. You never have to see me again if that's your choice. I stared at him. You'd just give me a multi-million-dollar facility? Yes. No hesitation. Because I meant what I said about wanting you to thrive. If that means thriving somewhere I'm not, then so be it. The offer should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like loss. Of something I hadn't known I wanted until faced with its absence. I don't want to leave. The words surprised me as much as they clearly surprised him. I like it here. I love the work, the animals, the resources to actually make a difference. I need to know this isn't going to blow up in my face like the clinic did. I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Sebastian's hand came up, cupping my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything about his usually controlled demeanor. But I can promise that if it does, I'll be standing beside you, not using you as a shield. You're not alone anymore, Riley. Not unless you choose to be. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I realized I was crying. When had that started? This is a terrible idea. You're my employer. The power dynamic is all wrong. People will say I slept my way into this position. People can go to hell. His other hand found my waist, not pulling, but steadying. You earned every inch of that hospital through skill and dedication. Anyone who suggests otherwise can answer to me. Sebastian. His name felt different on my tongue now. More intimate. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I. His smile was crooked, almost boyish. I've been in control of every aspect of my life for 20 years. Then you walked into that stall with Sultan, covered in blood and sweat and more beautiful than anyone I'd ever seen. And suddenly, none of my carefully constructed rules seemed to matter. I was not beautiful. I was exhausted and terrified that Horse was going to die. But I was smiling despite myself. You were magnificent. He said it with such conviction that I almost believed him. You still are, every damn day watching you work, seeing you care about creatures that most people wouldn't notice. It's addictive, Riley. You're addictive. I should have pulled away, should have cited all the logical reasons why this was inappropriate and unwise. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "So what do we do about it?" We start with honesty. His forehead touched mine, intimate and terrifying. I want you. Not as an employee or a protégé or any other clinical term that lets us pretend there's nothing here. I want you in ways that have nothing to do with veterinary medicine and everything to do with the way you laugh when a puppy licks your face. The way you sing to nervous animals. The way you challenge me when you think I'm being ridiculous. I challenge you a lot. My hands had somehow found their way to his chest, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive shirt. Exactly. His breath ghosted across my lips. So I'm asking, clearly and directly, would you consider letting this be something more than professional? No obligations, no pressure. Just possibility. Every logical bone in my body screamed warnings. 3 months wasn't long enough to know someone. He was too powerful, too wealthy, too accustomed to getting what he wanted. The last man I'd trusted had nearly destroyed my career and freedom. But Sebastian wasn't Marcus. He'd proven that in dozens of small ways over the past 3 months. The way he consulted me on every animal-related decision. The way he'd stepped back when I needed space to establish my authority. The way he'd celebrated my successes without trying to take credit. The way he was holding me now, like I was precious but not fragile, desired but not owned. Yes, the word came out barely audible, but slowly, and if it doesn't work, then we remain colleagues and professionals, and I'll respect whatever boundaries you set. His grip tightened fractionally. But Riley, I don't think it's going to not work. Confident, aren't you? But I was already rising on my toes, closing the distance between us. Hopeful, he corrected, and then his lips met mine, and the rest of the world disappeared. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined during the sleepless nights I'd pretended not to imagine it. Not demanding or possessive, but questioning, seeking permission with every movement, giving me space to retreat if I wanted. I didn't retreat. Instead, I pressed closer, my hands sliding up to tangle in his hair, answering his question with one of my own. What if this worked? What if the man who'd saved me from my worst nightmare turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me? When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sebastian's smile was incandescent. Well, that's a promising start. Shut up. But I was smiling too, feeling lighter than I had in months. This doesn't change anything professionally. I'm still the chief veterinary officer. You're still the owner. And if you ever try to override my medical judgment, you'll quit immediately and take the hospital with you. He finished. I know. Your terms are noted and accepted. Good. I stepped back, trying to restore some equilibrium. Now I need to check on the tiger cub and write up Diamond Girl's birth documentation and you need to eat an actual meal instead of those protein bars you live on. He took my hand, lacing our fingers together with casual confidence. Come up to the main house. Margaret's made roasted chicken, and we can discuss the expansion plans for the reptile house you mentioned last week. Sebastian. Colleagues have working dinners all the time. His expression was pure innocence. Unless you'd prefer it be something else? I looked at our joined hands, at his hopeful expression, at the estate sprawling around us with all its possibilities. Thought about foals being born and tiger cubs recovering and rare birds singing in climate-controlled aviaries. Thought about a future that looked nothing like the one I'd planned but somehow felt more right than anything ever had. Fine. But I'm not dressing up. And if you try to feed me caviar or any other rich people food, I'm leaving. His laugh echoed across the courtyard. Deal. Though you're missing out, Margaret's caviar is exceptional. As we walked toward the main house, the night settling around us and the stable behind us settling into evening routines, I realized something had shifted. The cage I'd imagined felt more like a sanctuary. The control I'd resented felt more like support. And the man holding my hand, once a stranger who'd upended my life, now felt like the answer to a question I hadn't known how to ask. I still had doubts, still worried about power dynamics and public perception and all the ways this could go wrong. But for the first time in my adult life, I also had hope that maybe, just maybe, I'd found somewhere I belonged. The main house dining room was less formal than I'd feared, more intimate library than grand hall, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a table that seated 8 instead of 30. Margaret had set 2 places at one end, close enough to feel personal without forcing awkward proximity. This is your casual dining room? I raised an eyebrow at the chandelier that probably cost more than a year of my former salary. What's the formal one like, Versailles? Worse, I avoid it whenever possible. Sebastian pulled out my chair, a gesture that should have felt antiquated but somehow didn't. The formal dining room seats 40 and has a mural on the ceiling depicting the history of New England horse breeding. It's aggressively pretentious. But you own it anyway. I accepted the seat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he settled across from me. I inherited it, he corrected. The estate belonged to my grandfather. He made his fortune in textile manufacturing, then spent 3 decades turning Crossroads Manor into a monument to his ego. I've been slowly making it livable. Margaret appeared with dinner, roasted chicken as promised, but also garlic potatoes, roasted vegetables, and fresh bread that smelled like heaven. My stomach growled audibly. When did you last eat? Sebastian's question held concern, not judgment. Breakfast. Maybe. I reached for the bread. I had that surgery, then the foaling, and before that, I was doing rounds on the aviaries because 2 of the macaws showed signs of feather plucking. Riley. He waited until I looked up. You're going to burn out. I'm fine. You work 16-hour days, 7 days a week. You've lost weight since you got here. And I found you asleep in the hospital break room last Tuesday at 3 a.m. His expression was gentle but firm. That's not sustainable. I have a lot to prove. The words came out more defensively than intended. This hospital, the facility, all of it. People need to know it's legitimate, not just some vanity project funded by your money. Nobody who's seen your work questions its legitimacy. Sebastian served himself but didn't start eating, clearly waiting for me. But killing yourself to prove a point doesn't help anyone. Not the animals, not me, and definitely not you. I wanted to argue. Instead, I took a bite of chicken and nearly moaned. Margaret's cooking was dangerous, the kind that made you remember food was supposed to be pleasurable, not just fuel. Fine, I'll try to maintain better boundaries. I reached for the vegetables. But the expansion plans can wait until after dinner. He finally began eating, his movements precise and controlled. Tell me about the tiger cub instead. Will she make a full recovery? We fell into conversation about medicine, animals, the peculiar challenges of exotic species care. It was comfortable, familiar, the same discussions we'd been having for months. But underneath ran a new current, awareness humming between us like electricity. I noticed details I'd been ignoring. The way his hands moved when he talked, precise and confident. The rare, genuine smile that transformed his usually controlled expression. The way he listened without interrupting, actually absorbing what I said instead of waiting for his turn to speak. What? He'd caught me staring. Nothing. I looked down at my plate, just thinking. About? His voice held amusement. About how this is probably a terrible idea. But I was smiling despite the words. You realize I'm completely unsuited for your world, right? I don't know which fork to use at formal dinners. I say, shit, when I'm frustrated. I once wore the same scrubs 3 days in a row because I forgot I owned other clothes. Good thing I don't care about any of that. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. I didn't rescue you from Marcus's mess because I wanted someone appropriate for society functions. I wanted you, exactly as you are. Even when I'm difficult? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Especially then. His thumb traced circles on my palm. Do you know what most people do when I make suggestions? They immediately agree. They tell me I'm brilliant. They scramble to implement whatever random thought I voiced, even when it's obviously flawed. And I tell you when you're being an idiot. I remembered last week's argument about expanding the reptile house. He'd wanted to add venomous species. I'd vetoed it as unnecessary risk without proper specialists on staff. You tell me the truth, he corrected. That's incredibly rare in my world. Most people see my bank account before they see me. Is that why you're still single? The question was too personal, but the kiss earlier had opened doors I couldn't quite close. Surely you've had opportunities. His expression shuddered slightly. I've had relationships, none that survived my work schedule and the realization that I was more interested in my horses than the women I was supposedly dating. That's sad. I meant it. You deserve better than that. So do you. He squeezed my hand gently. What about you? Any dramatic relationship history I should know about? Define dramatic. I considered lying, then remembered his comments about honesty. I dated a fellow veterinary student for 2 years. Thought we'd build a practice together, have the whole partnership thing. Then I found him in bed with a pharmaceutical sales rep and realized he'd been using our relationship to get access to my research notes the whole time. Jesus! Sebastian's grip tightened. What an absolute bastard. Yeah. The old wound barely twinged now, dulled by time and Marcus's more recent betrayal. I have terrible taste in men, apparently. I pick partners who see me as useful rather than valuable. Then it's fortunate I see you as both. He said it lightly, but something in his eyes suggested he meant it seriously. Though I hope you're starting to see the difference. Before I could respond, Margaret appeared in the doorway. Excuse me, Mr. Cross. There's an urgent call from your Boston property. Something about the permits for the rooftop garden renovation. Sebastian's jaw tightened with obvious frustration. Can it wait? The city inspector is apparently threatening to revoke the variance if you don't call back tonight. Margaret looked apologetic. I wouldn't interrupt if it wasn't critical. Of course. He stood reluctantly, his hand trailing across my shoulders as he passed. I'll be quick. Margaret, please bring out dessert for Dr. Thorne. Alone in the dining room, I took stock of my situation. 3 months ago, I'd been cornered in my clinic by a criminal partner, my entire life crashing down. Now I was eating gourmet food in a mansion, working at a world-class facility, and apparently dating, or whatever this was, a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. It felt too good, like the universe was setting me up for an even bigger fall. Margaret returned with what she called just a simple tart. Lemon, buttery crust, absolutely perfect. And I'd nearly finished when raised voices echoed from somewhere in the house. Sebastian's voice, sharp with anger, and another male voice I didn't recognize. I shouldn't have investigated. Should have stayed in my seat like a polite guest. But I'd spent 3 months at Crossroads Manor, and my veterinarian instincts, honed to detect distress, wouldn't let me ignore obvious conflict. I followed the voices to Sebastian's home office, a wood-paneled sanctuary of leather and mahogany. The door stood half open, and through it, I saw Sebastian facing a man in an expensive suit, their postures aggressive. Absolutely not. Sebastian's voice was cold enough to freeze. I've told you repeatedly, I'm not interested in your development scheme. Don't be naive, Cross. The other man, silver-haired, 60s, with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way, leaned against the desk. The Connecticut shoreline is the last major undeveloped area within easy reach of New York. Your properties are sitting on gold mines, and you're using them to house horses and birds. My properties, my choice. Sebastian crossed his arms. And the answer is still no, Richard. Now get out. You could triple your net worth. Richard's smile was predatory. Think what you could do with that kind of money. Bigger hotels, international expansion. You'd be the dominant luxury brand in 3 continents. I'm not interested in domination. Sebastian's voice dropped dangerously low. I'm interested in building something sustainable. Something that matters beyond profit margins. How noble. Richard's tone dripped sarcasm. And when the market shifts, when some crisis hits your hotel chain and you need liquid assets to survive, you'll remember this conversation and regret being so principled. I'll regret many things, but maintaining my integrity won't be one of them. Sebastian moved toward the door, clearly ending the conversation. We're done here. Margaret will see you out. That's when Richard noticed me hovering in the hallway. His eyes raked over my scrubs, still stained from the tiger surgery, and his smile turned mocking. Ah, the famous veterinarian. He said it like an insult. I've heard about Sebastian's new pet project. Millions poured into an animal hospital instead of revenue-generating development. Tell me, Dr. Thorne, what's it like being the most expensive charity case in Connecticut? The words hit like physical blows. Every insecurity I'd been suppressing rushed to the surface. Was that how people saw me? Sebastian's vanity project, bought and paid for like everything else in his world? That's enough. Sebastian's voice was deadly quiet. You have 5 seconds to leave before I have security escort you out. I'm leaving. Richard straightened his tie, unruffled. But think about my offer, Sebastian. Family legacies don't sustain themselves on sentiment. His gaze slid back to me. And be careful who you trust. People who have nothing often want everything. He brushed past me with deliberate rudeness, his expensive cologne cloying in the confined space. I heard Margaret's voice down the hall, formally cordial as she showed him out. Sebastian appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully controlled. Riley, I'm sorry you had to hear that. Who was he? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Richard Castellano, old family friend of my grandfather's. He's been pressuring me to sell or develop several of my properties for years. Sebastian ran a hand through his hair, disturbing its usual perfect order. I keep refusing. He keeps finding new angles to push. And I'm one of those angles. It wasn't a question. A weakness he can exploit by making you doubt your choices. You're not a weakness. Sebastian stepped closer, his hands finding my shoulders. You're the best decision I've made in years. Richard's just bitter because I won't let him turn Crossroads Manor into a shopping complex. But he's not entirely wrong, is he? I forced myself to meet his eyes. You've spent millions on the hospital, on equipment, staff, resources. That money could have gone toward your actual business. My actual business is doing fine. He cut me off gently. Better than fine. The exotic animal care program has become a draw for my hotel properties. Guests love the private stables and aviaries. We're booked solid for the next 2 years specifically because we offer experiences nobody else can match. That's PR spin. But my conviction was wavering. That's measurable data. He pulled out his phone, showing me charts and graphs I didn't fully understand. Revenue is up 30%. Brand recognition has doubled. We're expanding into new markets specifically because the animal care angle differentiates us from every other luxury hotel chain. So I'm good for business. The words tasted bitter. That's supposed to make me feel better? No. He pocketed the phone and cupped my face with both hands, forcing me to focus on him instead of my spiraling doubts. You're supposed to feel better because I'm telling you, clearly and explicitly, that Richard Castellano is a miserable old man who measures worth in dollars and sees generosity as weakness, and his opinion means absolutely nothing to me. But what if he's right? The question emerged as barely a whisper. What if I'm just another bad decision, another person taking advantage of you? Then I'll have learned something valuable. He said it so calmly that I almost believed him. But Riley, I don't think that's what's happening here. I think you're brilliant, dedicated, and so used to being exploited that you can't recognize genuine support when it's offered. That's not... I stopped, because maybe it was fair. Marcus had exploited me. My ex had used me. Even my parents, in their own way, had made my veterinary ambitions contingent on their approval and support, withdrawn the moment I chose exotic animals over the conventional small animal practice they'd envisioned. I'm not them. Sebastian's thumbs brushed away tears I hadn't realized were falling. I'm not Marcus, using you as cover for crimes. I'm not your ex, stealing your work. I'm not anyone who's hurt you before. I'm just me. Imperfect, sometimes controlling, probably too intense about things I care about. But honest, Riley. Always honest with you. How do I know that? My voice broke. How do I trust you when everyone else has proven trust is foolish? You don't know. He said it simply. You can't know. Trust isn't knowledge, it's faith. And faith requires a leap. All I can do is keep showing up, keep being consistent, keep proving through actions that my words aren't empty. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted it so badly it physically hurt. But Richard's words echoed in my mind. Expensive charity case, pet project, nothing wanting everything. I need time. I stepped back from his touch, needing space to think. This is all. It's too much, too fast. The kiss, dinner, the casual way you talk about millions of dollars like it's nothing. I don't know how to process it. Then take time. He let me go without resistance. The hospital is yours regardless. Your position here is secure regardless. And if you decide this, he gestured between us, is something you don't want, then we remain colleagues. Professional. Respectful. Just like that? I searched his face for signs of manipulation, for the anger or resentment that usually accompanied rejection. Just like that. He smiled, sad, but genuine. I meant what I said earlier, Riley. I want you happy. I want you thriving. If that means keeping me at arm's length, then that's what happens. The absolute certainty in his voice undid something in my chest, because this was exactly what I'd been searching for and never found. Someone who valued my well-being over their own desires. Someone who could hold space for my doubts without making them about themselves. Someone who might actually be worth the terrifying leap of faith. I'm not saying no. The clarification felt important. I'm saying I need to figure out how to say yes without it destroying me if everything falls apart. That's fair. He moved to his desk, putting physical distance between us. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. I left him in his office and walked back to the guest house where I'd been living for 3 months. A misnomer, really, since it was larger and nicer than any apartment I'd ever rented. My sanctuary, paid for by Sebastian's money but made home by my own choices. The tiger cub's recovery needed monitoring. The foal needed checking. Tomorrow's schedule included 3 consults and a comprehensive health screening of the aviary residents. Work I loved, resources I'd never dreamed of, purpose that fulfilled me in ways nothing else ever had. And underneath it all, a question that kept me awake most of the night. What would it cost to let myself love Sebastian Cross? And was I brave enough to find out? Dawn arrived cold and gray, rain drumming against the guest house windows with insistent rhythm. I'd managed maybe 3 hours of sleep, my mind too busy replaying Richard Castellano's words and Sebastian's response to allow proper rest. The tiger cub needed her morning check, and I was grateful for the excuse to escape my own thoughts. The hospital was warm and dry, the overnight tech greeting me with a tired smile. She's alert and ate breakfast. No complications. I spent 20 minutes examining the cub, documenting her recovery, watching her play with a rubber toy despite the surgical incision. Resilience, I thought. Animals understood it instinctively. You survived, you healed, you moved forward. Why was it so much harder for humans? Dr. Thorne? James appeared in the doorway, rain-soaked and breathless. Emergency. Mr. Cross needs you at the stables immediately. My heart dropped. Which horse? Sultan. The name made my stomach clench. He's down. Patricia's there, but she asked for you specifically. I ran. The rain soaked through my scrubs in seconds, cold and miserable, but I barely noticed. Sultan, the horse who'd started everything, the magnificent Arabian who'd survived impossible odds 3 months ago, was in trouble. The stable was chaos controlled by Patricia's calm authority. Sultan lay on his side in a padded stall, breathing labored, eyes rolling with pain. Sebastian knelt beside him, one hand on the horse's neck, his expensive clothes ruined by mud and straw. What happened? I dropped to my knees opposite Sebastian, my hands already moving over Sultan's body, checking vital signs. Found him like this 20 minutes ago. Patricia handed me a stethoscope. Heart rate 110, elevated but not critical. Temperature's normal. He's responsive, but clearly in severe pain. I pressed the stethoscope to Sultan's abdomen, listening intently. The gut sounds were wrong. Too quiet on the right side, hyperactive on the left. Classic signs of colic, but something about the presentation felt off. How long since his last bowel movement? I asked, my mind running through differential diagnoses. Yesterday evening, normal amount. Sebastian's voice was steady, but I saw the fear in his eyes. He loved this horse, had nearly lost him once already. Okay. I performed a rectal examination, Sultan barely protesting despite the discomfort. What I felt made my blood run cold. There's a mass, large, firm, blocking the pelvic flexure. Impaction? Patricia moved closer. Or something else? I need imaging. I stood, already calculating. We have to get him to the hospital, get him scanned. If it's a simple impaction, we can treat medically, but if it's a tumor or torsion, then we're looking at surgery. Sebastian finished. He was already moving, coordinating with stable staff to prepare transportation. Whatever you need, Riley. Whatever it takes. Getting a 1,000-pound horse safely from stable to hospital in the rain was a nightmare of logistics. But Sebastian's staff were professionals. Within 30 minutes, Sultan was secured in the hospital's specialized equine surgery suite, and I was reviewing ultrasound images that confirmed my worst fears. Enter a lith. I pointed to the large mineral mass visible on the screen. About 30 centimeters, lodged at the pelvic flexure. It's completely blocking the colon. Can you remove it? Sebastian had been silent during the examination, letting me work, but now his question held barely controlled emotion. Yes, but it requires major surgery. We'll need to make a large incision, manually remove the stone, then close. There are risks: infection, adhesions, complications from anesthesia. I met his eyes. But without surgery, he'll die. Probably within 24 hours. Then we do surgery. No hesitation. When? Now. I looked at Patricia, who was already prepping the surgical suite. We need to move fast before the bowel perforates. James, get Dr. Morrison from Yale. We need an equine anesthesiologist on standby. Patricia, prep surgical packs and get the antibiotics ready. Sebastian, I know. He stepped back, reading my unspoken request. I'll wait outside. Sebastian, I caught his arm. This is risky. You need to understand that even with perfect surgery, his chances are maybe 70%. If there's been any intestinal damage, if infection sets in, if he doesn't respond to treatment. I understand. He covered my hand with his. But he's not dying without a fight. Neither of you are giving up on him. That's enough. The surgery took 4 hours. 4 hours of intense focus, my hands working inside Sultan's abdomen, carefully extracting the massive mineral stone that had been slowly killing him. Patricia assisted with the precision of decades of experience, while James monitored vitals and called out readings like a metronome marking time. The stone, when I finally freed it, was horrifying. Smooth, dense, the size of a grapefruit. Years of mineral buildup, probably from water chemistry combined with dietary factors. Preventable if anyone had known to watch for it. Intestinal wall looks good. Patricia examined the tissue under bright surgical lights. No perforations, minimal necrosis. He got lucky. We all got lucky. I began the closing process, my sutures neat and methodical despite my exhaustion. But he's not out of the woods yet. Post-op recovery is going to be critical. When we finally wheeled Sultan into recovery, when I peeled off my blood-soaked surgical gloves and scrubbed the gore from my arms, I found Sebastian exactly where I'd left him. Sitting in the waiting area, soaked clothes dried into wrinkles, hair disheveled, looking nothing like the polished businessman who'd kissed me in the courtyard yesterday. He made it through surgery, I said, without preamble. The stone is out, the bowel looks healthy. Now we wait and see how he responds to recovery. Sebastian stood so fast, he nearly knocked over his chair. Can I see him? Not yet. He needs to wake up from anesthesia, and we need to monitor him closely for the next few hours. I gestured to the coffee maker in the corner. But you can wait here if you want. It's going to be a long night. Then I'm staying. He poured 2 cups, handing me one without asking if I wanted it. You should eat something. I should monitor my patient. But I took the coffee, letting the warmth seep into my cold hands. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving me shaky and exhausted. Patricia's monitoring him. James is there too. Sebastian guided me to a chair, his hand on my elbow, gentle but insistent. You just performed major surgery after working yesterday's full shift. Sit down before you fall down. I wanted to argue, but my legs agreed with him. I collapsed into the chair, and suddenly the events of the last 36 hours crashed over me. The tiger cub, the foaling, dinner with Sebastian, Richard Castellanos' cutting remarks, sleepless night wrestling with doubt, emergency surgery on a horse I'd saved once and might be saving again. Hey. Sebastian knelt in front of me, his hands covering mine. You're shaking. Adrenaline crash. I tried to smile. Happens after intense surgery. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're exhausted and probably in shock. He pulled out his phone. I'm having Margaret bring food. Real food, not protein bars. Sultan. Has a full team watching him. You trained them well. They'll call if anything changes. His thumb traced circles on my wrist, the touch grounding. Right now, you need to take care of yourself. Is this how it's going to be? The question came out sharper than intended. You managing my life, making decisions about what I need. Is this you looking for reasons to push me away? He countered, his expression gentle. Because I'm trying to make sure you don't collapse from exhaustion, not control you. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. Because he was right. I was picking a fight, manufacturing conflict, anything to avoid the terrifying vulnerability of accepting help. I don't know how to do this. The confession felt like surrender. How to let someone take care of me without it being a trap, I know. He stood, pulling me up with him and into an embrace that should have felt presumptuous but instead felt safe. And I'm not asking you to figure it all out right now. I'm just asking you to sit down, drink coffee, and eat when food arrives. That's it. No hidden agenda. I let myself lean against him, just for a moment, feeling the solid strength of his body and the steady beat of his heart. What if I'm not worth all this trouble? What if you are? He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. What if you're worth exactly this much trouble and more? What if I'm not doing this because I expect something in return, but because seeing you thrive makes me happier than anything else? That's not how the world works. But I didn't pull away. People don't just give without taking. Then maybe my world is different than yours. He eased me back into the chair, then settled beside me instead of opposite. Close enough to touch, but not crowding. Maybe I've got enough money that I can afford to be generous without it costing me. Maybe I've seen enough ugliness in business that I want to create something beautiful just because I can. The hospital. I understood suddenly. That's what this is about. Not just Sultan, not just me. You wanted to build something that mattered. Yes. Simple agreement. I inherited enormous wealth and all the privileges that come with it. I could spend my entire life accumulating more money, more properties, more power. Or I could use what I have to make something meaningful, to support people who are actually changing the world in ways I never could. I'm not changing the world, I protested. I'm just treating animals. You saved an endangered species today, he reminded me. That tiger cub belongs to a breeding program trying to prevent extinction. You performed surgery that most vets wouldn't attempt, giving her a chance to contribute to her species' survival. That's not nothing, Riley. That's everything. Margaret arrived with food, sandwiches, soup, fruit, and tactfully disappeared. We ate in companionable silence, the kind that felt comfortable instead of awkward. Through the window, I could see the sun beginning to set, painting the rainy sky in shades of gray and silver. He's going to make it, I said finally. Sultan. I know it's too early to be certain, but I have a good feeling. I trust your instincts. Sebastian finished his sandwich. You've proven them reliable. Even when my instincts tell me this, I gestured between us, is terrifying and possibly stupid? Even then. His smile was crooked. Though I'd argue your instincts are protecting you from past hurt, not warning you about present danger. Semantics. But I was smiling despite myself. You're very persistent, you know that? I prefer determined. He stood, offering his hand. Come on, let's check on our patient. I let him pull me up, let our fingers intertwine naturally, let myself feel the simple comfort of not being alone. The recovery room was quiet, Sultan breathing steadily under careful monitoring. Patricia looked up as we entered. Vitals are stable. He's starting to wake up, responding to stimuli, moving a bit. I think he's going to surprise us with a smooth recovery. Relief washed over me so intensely I felt dizzy. Sebastian's arm came around my waist, steadying, and I didn't pull away. "Good boy, Sultan." I approached the recovery stall, speaking softly. "You're doing great. Just keep fighting." The horse's ear twitched at my voice, and I saw recognition in his eyes despite the lingering effects of anesthesia. He remembered me, trusted me, expected me to fix things. "I've got you," I promised him. "We all do." Sebastian's hand found mine again, squeezing gently. No words, just presence, just being there in a moment that could have been lonely, but instead felt shared. When Patricia finally cleared me to leave, promising to call with any changes, I realized I'd been at the hospital for nearly 16 hours. My body ached with exhaustion, my mind felt foggy, and I desperately needed a shower. "Come on." Sebastian guided me toward the exit. "The guest house has a hot tub. Doctor's orders. You're soaking for at least 30 minutes before you collapse." "That's not doctor's orders. You're not a doctor." But I didn't resist as we walked through the rain, now reduced to a gentle mist. "Fine. Employer's orders." He held an umbrella over both of us. "How's that for appropriate workplace boundaries?" "Terrible. You're terrible at boundaries." But I was laughing, the sound surprising me with its genuine joy. At the guest house, he left me at the door with a final squeeze of my hand. "Soak. Sleep. Text me if you need anything, even if it's 3 in the morning and you're freaking out about Sultan, or about us, or about anything." "Sebastian?" I caught his arm before he could leave. "Thank you. For today. For not pushing. For just being here. Always." He said it simply, and I believed him. Inside, I stripped off my filthy scrubs and sank into the hot tub, letting the heat work out the knots in my shoulders. Steam rose around me, creating a cocoon of warmth and peace. My phone sat within reach, showing a text from Sebastian. "Sultan's still stable. Patricia says he's resting comfortably. You did good today, Doc." I typed back, "We all did good today." His response came immediately. "You made it possible. Sleep well, Riley." I stared at the screen, at those simple words that somehow felt like everything. Then I typed something I hadn't planned to say, something that terrified me with its honesty. "I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you stayed." 3 dots appeared, showing he was typing. Then, "I'm not going anywhere. Not ever, if you'll let me." I fell asleep that night, in an unfamiliar bed in a life I'd never imagined, with my phone clutched to my chest and a smile on my face. And for the first time since Marcus's betrayal, I felt something dangerous and wonderful blooming in my chest. Hope. 6 months transformed everything. I stood in the main surgical suite, expanded now to include dedicated equine, avian, and reptile operating rooms, and watched my team work with the precision of a symphony orchestra. We'd just completed a complex wing reconstruction on a rescued bald eagle, and the bird was recovering beautifully under James's careful monitoring. "Dr. Thorne?" My assistant poked her head through the door. "Your 3 o'clock is here. The collector from Dubai with the snow leopard cub." "Give me 5 minutes." I stripped off my surgical gloves and scrubbed up, catching my reflection in the polished steel sink. I looked different than I had 6 months ago. Healthier, less exhausted, almost happy. Regular meals and actual sleep schedules had added back the weight I'd lost after Marcus's betrayal. My hair, usually yanked into a hasty ponytail, was styled into something presentable. I even wore mascara occasionally, though Sebastian swore he couldn't tell the difference. Sebastian. Thinking his name still made my pulse quicken, even after months of what were we, exactly? Dating felt too casual for what we'd become. Partners implied business. Lovers suggested something purely physical. We were us. Complicated, intense, occasionally infuriating, and somehow working. The Dubai collector was everything I'd expected: wealthy, demanding, and genuinely concerned about his exotic pet. The snow leopard cub had a congenital heart defect requiring surgery that no other veterinarian in the Western Hemisphere would attempt. "I've consulted with specialists at 3 universities," I explained, showing him the imaging results on my tablet. "The procedure is experimental, high risk, but gives her a 60% chance at normal life expectancy. Without surgery, she'll be dead within a year." "And you've done this before?" He studied the scans with intelligent eyes. "On smaller cats, yes. Never on a snow leopard. But the anatomy is similar, and I've been preparing for months." I met his gaze directly. "I can't promise success. I can promise that she'll receive the best care possible." He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "Proceed. Money is no object. I want her to have every chance." After he left, I found Sebastian in his office, reviewing architectural plans for the newest hotel property. He looked up as I entered, his expression shifting from business intensity to something softer. "How'd it go with the Dubai client?" He pushed the plans aside, giving me his full attention. "Surgery scheduled for next Tuesday. James is reaching out to the cardiac specialists at Cornell for consultation." I collapsed into the chair across from his desk. "It's going to be intense." "You'll be brilliant." He said it with such certainty that I almost believed him. "You always are." Flatterer, but I was smiling. "What are you working on?" "The Singapore property." He turned the laptop to show me renderings of a stunning hotel complex. "I'm adding a bird sanctuary as part of the public gardens. Wanted your input on species selection and habitat design." I leaned forward, studying the plans with growing excitement. This was how we worked now, his business ventures incorporating my expertise, my medical practice supported by his resources. True partnership, the kind I'd never found with Marcus or anyone else. You need native species primarily, but a few exotic elements for wow factor. I pointed to various sections. "Indonesian hornbills here. They're stunning and do well in aviaries. Maybe some smaller parrots here for color. And this area could be a butterfly garden. Guests love interactive experiences." "Perfect." He made notes, his hand brushing mine as we both reached for the tablet. The contact sent familiar electricity through my system, and from his slight smile, he felt it too. "Dinner tonight?" he asked, casual in a way that no longer fooled me. Sebastian's casual was carefully calculated to give me space to refuse without pressure. "Can't. I have that lecture at Yale. Advanced Techniques in Exotic Animal Surgery." I'd been teaching 1 class per semester, at Sebastian's gentle insistence that I shouldn't keep all my knowledge locked away. "But tomorrow? Tomorrow I'm in Boston reviewing the waterfront property renovations." He checked his calendar. "Thursday? Thursday, I'm supervising the installation of the new MRI machine. We'd been playing this game for 2 weeks, both so busy that coordinating schedules required strategic planning. "This is ridiculous," I laughed despite myself. "We live on the same estate and haven't had a real date in 3 weeks." "I know." He stood, circling the desk to pull me up into a kiss that made my toes curl. "Which is why I'm declaring Friday evening mandatory." "Oh, really?" I raised an eyebrow. "You're declaring it?" "I'm strongly suggesting it with extreme persuasion," he corrected, his hand settling on my waist. "Dinner, just us, no phones, no business discussions. Actual date where we remember why we like each other. I never forget why I like you." The admission came easier now than it had months ago. "But okay. Friday. Mandatory date night." "Good." He kissed me again, slower this time, deep enough to make me forget I was supposed to be preparing for a lecture. "Now go wow those Yale students with your brilliance." The lecture went well. A room full of veterinary students hanging on every word as I described complex surgical procedures most of them would never attempt. During the Q&A, a young woman in the back raised her hand. "Dr. Thorne, I have to ask, what's it like working with the Cross organization? Everyone says you sold out, that you're just his vanity project." The question should have stung. Months ago, it would have devastated me. Now I just smiled. I could tell you about the $1 million surgical suite, or the unlimited research budget, or the fact that I'm performing procedures that advance the entire field of exotic veterinary medicine. I met her challenging gaze directly, but what matters is this. I save more lives now than I ever could have in private practice. I have resources to take on cases other vets turn away. And yes, I work for someone who values animal welfare enough to invest ridiculous amounts of money in it. If that's selling out, then I'm guilty. After the lecture, several students approached me privately. 2 asked about internship opportunities. One, an older student, probably ex-military based on his bearing, hung back until the others left. "Dr. Thorne, I'm Mike Chen, Patricia's nephew. She told me to look you up." He handed me a business card. "I'm finishing my DVM next year, specializing in exotic animals. If you're looking for associates, we're always looking for good people." I pocketed the card. "Send me your CV and references. We'll talk." Driving back to Crossroads Manor, I reflected on how normal this had all become. The estate that had seemed like a prison 6 months ago now felt like home. The man I'd been terrified to trust now felt like my partner in every sense that mattered. The career I'd thought destroyed had transformed into something bigger than I'd ever imagined. Sultan met me at the stable entrance, fully recovered and gleaming with health. He nuzzled my shoulder, searching for the carrots I usually carried. Spoiled beast. But I produced the treat anyway, stroking his velvety nose. "You started all this, you know. If Sebastian hadn't brought you to my clinic that night, then I would have found another way to meet you." Sebastian's voice came from behind me. Fate's persistent like that. I turned to find him leaning against the stable door, casual in jeans and a polo shirt instead of his usual suit. "I thought you had conference calls all evening." I rescheduled. He moved closer, that predatory grace that still made my breath catch. "Because I realized something today." "What's that?" I let him pull me close, Sultan snorting approval behind us. "That I'm tired of waiting." His hands framed my face, intense and sure. "That I've been giving you space and time to adjust, to trust, to feel safe. But 6 months is enough time to know what I want." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Sebastian, let me finish." His thumbs traced my cheekbones. "I'm not proposing. Not yet, though that's definitely in our future if you'll have me. But I'm saying that this, us, isn't casual for me. It's never been casual. You're not a project or a charity case or any other dismissive label people want to apply. You're the woman I love, and I'm done being subtle about it." The words stole my breath. We danced around feelings for months, implied and suggested, but never stated explicitly. Hearing him say it out loud, clear and direct, felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. "You love me," I repeated, testing the words. Desperately. He said it without hesitation. Probably since that first night with Sultan, though I didn't recognize it then. Definitely since you threatened me with a ceramic hoof while Marcus's thugs were closing in. Absolutely since the night you stayed up with Starlight, exhausted and stubborn, and refusing to let her suffer alone. I struggled for words. That's a lot of love. It's exactly the right amount. His smile was crooked, uncertain for the first time since I'd known him. And I'm not expecting you to say it back. I know you need time. I know trust doesn't come easy after everything you've been through. But I wanted you to know where I stand. No ambiguity, no games. I love you, Riley Thorne, and I'm in this for however long you'll let me stay. I could have played it safe, could have thanked him politely and asked for more time, could have hidden behind professional boundaries or fear, or any of the dozen defense mechanisms I'd built over years of being hurt. Instead, I kissed him. Not the careful kisses we'd shared before, testing boundaries and respecting limits. This was honest, raw. Every emotion I'd been suppressing for months poured into the connection between us. His arms locked around me, lifting me off my feet, and I wrapped my legs around his waist without conscious thought. I love you too, I gasped when we finally broke apart. I've been terrified to say it, terrified to admit it even to myself. But I do. I love you, Sebastian Cross, and it's the most frightening and wonderful thing I've ever felt. His laugh was pure joy. Frightening? Terrifying, I confirmed. Because losing you would destroy me, and I spent years building walls to prevent exactly that kind of vulnerability. Then it's good that I don't plan on going anywhere. He set me down carefully, his forehead resting against mine. We're in this together, Doc. Every surgery, every crisis, every triumph. You and me, building something neither of us could create alone. That's disgustingly romantic. But I was smiling through tears. All so accurate. Come on. He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. I may have rescheduled those calls, but I definitely planned something better. He led me not to the main house, but to a section of the estate I rarely visited. The original carriage house, the one that predated even the hospital renovation. Inside, he'd created something out of a fantasy. Candles lit the space, hundreds of them, casting warm light over a table set for two. Not the formal dining room or even the casual space we usually used, but something intimate and private. The walls were hung with photos, candid shots I hadn't known existed. Me performing surgery, me laughing with animals, me asleep in the stable that first night with Starlight. You've been documenting us, I realized, studying the images. I wanted to remember. He pulled out my chair. Every moment you've been here has been worth remembering, even the difficult ones, especially the difficult ones. They're all part of our story. Dinner was simple, pasta, salad, wine, but the intimacy of the setting made it perfect. We talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing easily between serious and silly. He told me about his grandfather's impossible expectations, the pressure to maintain a legacy he'd never asked for. I told him about my mother's disappointment when I chose exotic animals over conventional practice, the weight of family disapproval I'd carried for years. They thought I was being deliberately difficult. I twirled pasta around my fork, choosing the hardest path just to prove I could. They never understood that this is who I am, someone who cares about the animals nobody else wants to treat. Then they're fools. Sebastian's declaration was matter of fact. Your mother should be proud she raised someone with the integrity to follow her passion despite criticism. Your father should celebrate having a daughter brilliant enough to pioneer new surgical techniques, and if they can't see that, it's their loss entirely. When did you become wise? I teased, but his words healed something I hadn't known still hurt. Since you started forcing me to examine my assumptions about everything. He refilled my wine glass. You're inconvenient that way, Dr. Thorne, making me question my priorities and realize that empire building isn't nearly as satisfying as watching you save a life. After dinner, we danced. No music, just the sound of rain starting against the roof and our own heartbeats. His arms were solid around me, and I let myself fully relax for what felt like the first time in my adult life. I want to show you something, Sebastian said eventually, pulling back just far enough to meet my eyes. A surprise I've been planning for months. He led me outside, through the rain to a part of the estate I'd never explored, a wooded section near the property boundary. Through the trees, I saw lights and heard construction sounds that seemed wrong for the late hour. What is this? I followed him down a newly paved path, Your wedding present. He said it casually, as if that statement didn't make my heart nearly stop. Though I suppose I'm getting ahead of myself with that assumption. Sebastian, just look first. He pushed aside some branches, revealing a clearing where a building was taking shape. Not finished yet, but far enough along to show its purpose. A rehabilitation center, specifically designed for exotic wildlife, with massive enclosures visible even in the partial construction. A hospital wing for medical care, outdoor habitats for recovery, space for education and research. I don't understand. I stared at the structure, my mind struggling to process the scope. You save animals that other people break. Sebastian moved behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist. But saving them isn't enough. They need somewhere to recover, to relearn how to be wild, to have a second chance. This is that place. This must cost millions. The scale of it was overwhelming. Tens of millions by the time it's finished. He agreed easily. Money I'd rather spend on this than another hotel property or investment portfolio. Money that means nothing compared to watching you light up when you describe your vision for wildlife conservation. I turned in his arms, studying his face. You're really doing this? Building me a rehabilitation center? I'm building us a rehabilitation center, he corrected. I handle the business and funding. You provide medical expertise and direction. Together we create something that actually matters. Something that saves species and advances conservation and gives animals hope when they have none. You're insane. But I was crying again, overwhelmed by the enormity of his gesture. Beautifully, generously insane. I prefer ambitious. He wiped away my tears with his thumb, and in love with a woman who deserves every resource I can provide to pursue her passion. So, yes, Riley, I'm building you a wildlife rehabilitation center and a research laboratory, and whatever else you need to change the world one animal at a time. I kissed him again, there in the rain with our half-built future rising behind us. Kissed him until we were both breathless and soaked and laughing at the absurdity of it all. When? I asked finally. When did you plan all this? Started the day after you agreed to stay, he admitted. I knew then that you were going to revolutionize exotic animal medicine. I wanted to give you the platform to do it properly. You're too much. But I was smiling. Too generous, too intense, too everything. Too much in love with you to do anything halfway. He took my hand, threading our fingers together. So that's my confession, Dr. Thorne. I've been planning our future since the beginning, hoping you'd want it too. Hoping you'd eventually trust me enough to build it together. I want it. The admission felt like the final wall crumbling. All of it. The center, the partnership, the future. You. Then you have me, he said simply. All of me. For as long as you'll take me. We walked back to the main house together, soaked and muddy and ridiculously happy. Margaret met us at the door with towels and a knowing smile. The guest house hot tub is prepared, she informed us primly. Along with champagne and those chocolates Dr. Thorne likes. I took the liberty of assuming you'd both need warming up. You're wonderful, Margaret. I impulsively hugged her, something I'd never done before. Thank you. You're quite welcome, Dr. Thorne. But she was smiling as she ushered us toward the guest house. Mr. Cross is significantly more pleasant when you're around. That alone deserves my full support. Later, in the hot tub with champagne and chocolate and Sebastian's arms around me, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I'd spent years afraid of depending on anyone, convinced that trust inevitably led to betrayal. But Sebastian had proven different. Not through grand gestures, though those certainly helped, but through consistent daily choices, the way he consulted me on decisions, the way he celebrated my successes without trying to take credit, The way he gave me space when I needed it, and support when I asked. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his breath warm against my neck. That I'm happy. Simple words, profound truth. That for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Good. His arms tightened slightly. Because I plan on keeping you this happy for the next 60 years or so. Only 60? I teased. Not very ambitious. Fine. 70, 80. However long we get, I'm planning on maximizing every moment. He turned me to face him. I love you, Riley. Today, tomorrow, every day after. That's not changing. I love you too. And saying it felt right, felt true in a way nothing else had in my chaotic, complicated life. Now shut up and kiss me before I get emotional again. He laughed and complied, and I tasted champagne and chocolate and promise on his lips. Outside, rain continued to fall on Crossroads Manor. On the stables where Sultan dozed comfortably. On the hospital where recovering animals slept under careful monitoring. On the half-built rehabilitation center that represented our shared future. On all of it, washing away the past and leaving space for something new to grow. Something real. Something lasting. Something ours.